Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, welcome to the Ashden Awards Conference. Delighted to be here this morning, to be your host, come facilitator, come chair, for our session this morning, which, as you know, is focused on the UK, and this afternoon's session is focused on the global story, looking at the finalists in the UK Awards this morning and the finalists in the international category this afternoon. So we have a rich feast ahead of us, I can assure you, and I'm just delighted as a trustee of the Ashden Awards to have a chance to share this session with you. One or two rather obvious things. Should there be a fire alarm, could you just head for one of these green exits and out onto Exhibition Road, where you will be required to gather. You will have noticed in the program that there is no break as such. There is a moment where we shuffle the chairs around up here, and that might take us up to 5 minutes. And you are, of course, entitled at that stage to nip out and grab some water, and if you can, get to the loo. But we'll start after 5 minutes, so if you're not back, you'll be in trouble. So it isn't a proper break, okay? It's just a time to go and get yourself re-watered. I hope that we're going to have a chance today to share some of the very pressing issues here in the UK from a policy perspective and an on-the-ground practice perspective about where the whole world of sustainable energy at the local level is going, to look at some of the initiatives currently underway already in the UK, the new policy approaches being undertaken by government and by DEC, and to think about the consequences of all of that from the perspective of our finalists and from your perspectives in terms of where that takes us over the next year or so. And I don't doubt that there will be the usual mixture of upbeat stuff, things that are going well and give us all a bit of more hope for the future, and some inevitable downbeat stuff, as we don't exactly spend all of our lives living in a kind of sunlit, balmy atmosphere where we know that everything is just going fantastically well. It's a complicated mixture of things, which it's often very difficult to interpret, particularly for practitioners on the ground, coping with very real short-term issues about the success of their own project, what it is that enables them to grow and thrive, and how that fits with the big international scene at the same time. And I just want to start with that, because although this afternoon will keep its focus unerringly on the global and the international scene, we are, of course, deeply affected by it here in the UK. And all of our finalists are affected by what's going on globally, as well as the issues closer to home. And I was very struck by that yesterday when the announcement of the referendum in Italy was declared to the world. And Mr. Berlusconi got his comeuppance in good order from the citizens of Italy, who, amongst other things they were voting on, gave a resounding no to the prospects for nuclear power in Italy. The post-Fukushima fallout is really interesting to watch. I attended and spoke at an event in the House of Commons yesterday when we were reminded that as you cast your eye over the nuclear scene in Europe today, there are only 2 countries left in Europe that have any residual interest in nuclear power. One is France, for rather obvious reasons. It does still generate a very significant proportion of its electricity from nuclear, and probably wishes to replace that proportion from nuclear. And the other is the UK, for wholly less obvious reasons. Indeed, were it not for the EDF presence in the UK, many people would question the degree to which there would still be any rationale for nuclear here in this country. So we can't ignore that. It's a big part of what we hope to do for low-carbon supply options here in the UK, and it will inevitably have a very big impact on those whose principal concern in life is to advance ideas and practice about energy efficiency done in a completely different way, and renewables, including microgeneration, done in a completely different way, and at a different scale and with a different degree of purpose and clarity than the UK has ever been able to think about before. I'm sure many of you would like to subscribe to the idea that there isn't any necessary clash between keeping the nuclear option open and doing efficiency and renewables really brilliantly well. I'm not so sure about that. And I think there is now deep confusion in the minds of our policymakers inside DEC on that score. Andrew Warren, the director of the Association for the Conservation of Energy, was one of our speakers yesterday, and he rather tellingly reminded us that it was 20 years to the day that he'd appeared in the same committee room in the House of Commons to talk about the need for energy efficiency being treated in a rather different and more strategic way. And he said, in the 20 years, this government, in whichever department it may be, whether it was DTI or BIS or whatever name the department then had, that department and Treasury, between them, have still failed completely in the 20 years ever to do a proper financial comparison between investment in nuclear power and investment in energy efficiency. That work still has never been done. Never been done. It's unbelievable. We march boldly forward into this new low-carbon world without some of the absolute basics on the research front in place. Staggering to me, absolutely staggering that we can still do that. Now, I don't want to get too paranoid about this, but does it suit some people that that kind of cross-comparison, that kind of research is not done at the level it should be? Are there some vested interests in business and in government that want to keep that sort of research agenda at bay? Difficult to answer that one. I suspect it's more to do with cock up and muddle than with any really significant, consistent attempt to conspire to do UK consumers down, but still, it's a bit worrying. Meanwhile, of course, elsewhere in the world, things change. Germany's come to a very different decision. What was the first thing that Angela Merkel announced when she said there would be an accelerator closure program for the nuclear reactors by 2022? The first thing she said is, we've already had eye-wateringly ambitious targets for reducing total energy consumption in Germany. In comparison to us here in the UK, eye-wateringly ambitious. And guess what? They're now going to be even more eye-wateringly ambitious. Because the thing that matters most now in Germany, as soon as you lose that element of generation from nuclear, is you have to reduce the total amount of energy that the economy is calling on. That's their number one priority, followed then by increased investments in renewables and an attempt then to finesse what I think is a quite tricky situation on cleaner fossil fuels, whether it's more imports of gas, coal in some disguise or another, whatever it might be. Not an easy story for Germany to deal with, that's for sure. When you lose that percentage of your total generating capacity, nearly 16 gigawatts of electricity, that's a big hit. And elsewhere, as we know, the news keeps changing, things keep looking more hopeful. I couldn't help but look at the FT article recently about grid parity for PV in California and in the rest of the world, and I was privileged enough to sit in on a conference of venture capitalists 4 weeks ago where the key speaker had just returned from China, had met all of the big 5 PV manufacturers in China, and had come back with a very clear, crystal clear conclusion that as far as those manufacturers in China were concerned, with unit costs coming down and down and down on a regular basis, they would be able to provide PV at grid parity within the next 2 years. Roughly $1 a watt within the next 2 years. Some say it's already there in some parts of the world. In California, the claim is now made that we've already got PV at grid parity. So all of those voices you hear that keep pushing out the revolution, keep saying, oh yeah, no, PV might be sort of useful in sort of a few odd places at some stage in the future. But don't get too excited about it, because it's never going to be a competitor for the real energy sources that we depend on. You need to listen to them much more carefully these days and ask yourself what it is that they're so frightened of as they come forward with those transparent lies. They are lies. This is not something that's going to happen in 10 years. This is something that's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. So why are people lying about this? What's going on that makes people so defensive, protective of their own particular area of concern here? it makes you wonder, really, whether the government's latest moves on feed-in tariffs here in the UK are quite as smart as Greg Barker would have us believe they are. But perhaps I better not comment any more about that, for fear of treading on other people's toes who I hope will be commenting as trenchantly as I would like to. We will, of course, be considering the role of DEC, its place in the government, the battles it has to fight, its endless war of attrition with an ideologically driven treasury, which is as bad and backward-looking as it ever was under any previous government, and the need for DEC to find its place in Whitehall and fight its battles. I was very interested thinking about our finalists in this morning's session, how important it's going to be to think of the connections between DEC and other government departments. And I've no doubt that you will hear, for instance, from Paul Allen from CAT, that you'll hear a bit about the importance of BIS's role in this, not just a green deal, but a green skills deal. How do we get BIS to get excited about this, rather than looking like a kind of interloper at somebody else's party? I've no doubt we'll hear from Mark Stead from 7Y Energy Agency about the importance of the Department for Education and what Mr. Gove might usefully do to step up to the plate in terms of the Sustainable Schools Initiative inside that department, or what is left of it. And no doubt you'll all be slightly unnerved by the headline in The Guardian on Monday, indicating that the government's advisor on the core science curriculum is going to do everything in his power to eliminate climate change as a core issue in that part of the core curriculum. Wow, there are some amazing people out there today. And I've no doubt we'll hear from Fiona from Transition Towns in Totnes how important it's going to be to get DCLG a little bit more spiked up and interested in this, and really through the localism bill, thinking about the way in which they could turn that big part of the government's agenda, because the localism bill is a really big deal for this government, how they could couple that up much more with a community-driven revolution in energy efficiency and microgeneration at that level. Not happening at the moment. Localism bill doesn't seem to realize that there is going to be a profound transformation in the lives of millions of people across the whole of the UK as a consequence of what we're now trying to do through a different energy strategy. There's almost no point of connection in that whatsoever at the community level. So we're going to hear about other departments, but obviously DEC will be our focus, and I'm sure we'll hear from Paul from the Radiant Housing Association about the Green Deal and the ups and downs of that, and from Ewan about the renewable heat incentive. So lots of things that we'll be touching on today. Inevitably, it's quite important on a day like today to try and keep the tone right. We want to hear lots of the good stuff as well as some of the things that are causing people concern. And just to take stock of the fact that this is still an unfolding evolution for this country, it still seems to me when I hear about what's going on in other countries, particularly Germany, that I'm very focused on at the moment, because you keep asking the question, if they can do it in Germany, why the bloody hell can't we? So I keep looking at all these comparisons between us and Germany. Brilliant new little study published by the LSE about why Germany has been so much better on energy efficiency. As you keep looking at all of that stuff, you have to keep asking yourself, what is so special about UK systems that make it so grindingly difficult to get this stuff landed? I've no doubt that'll be some of the material that we will deal with in our deliberations today. Anyway, enough of me. Let's get on with the real stuff, which is to listen to some of our finalists. So what we've organized for you now is two chunks of stuff. We're going to hear from three of our finalists in the first chunk, and then the remaining two finalists in the second chunk. And what we've asked them to do, after a little film has been shown about why they've been selected as an Ashden Award finalist, once you've had a chance to look at the film, they will then come up onto the stage here and will talk for 2 minutes about the work they're doing. But we've asked them to do one thing in particular, which is to imagine themselves trapped in a lift with David Cameron and Chris Huhne for 2 minutes. This is a surreal moment in their lives, and mine, I've no doubt. What would you do with your 2 minutes? What are the two things you'd like to get across in your 2 minutes to make a real impact on the Prime Minister and on the Secretary of State in DEC? And we'll see what they all come up with. So we're going to start with Fiona, then we move on to Mark, and then after that we have Paul Allen from CAT. So I'm not going to give you a bigger introduction than that. You all know what you're up for, and they will just come to the stage seamlessly and do their stuff. Fiona, thank you.
Transition Together was originally conceived here in Totnes through the Transition Town Totnes initiative as a way of engaging people in a street-by-street kind of a way.
So a group usually starts by somebody coming into the office or ringing us up and saying they're interested in starting up a group in their neighbourhood. And they are the ones who then actually go and recruit all their neighbours. So that is something that's a bit different about our project. We don't go out and knock on people's doors. They're the one who does it. So they usually get together between about 6 and 10 of their neighbours, and they then go through 7 sessions. So they have 7 meetings together. The first one we facilitate. We send somebody along just to help them get off on the right track and to set a schedule of when they're going to be meeting again. And then the second session looks at energy use in the home. So there's about 10 to 12 practical actions that they can take, none of which cost much money at all. So we're really focusing on no cost or low cost actions for people. And then at the end of that first session, they write a little action plan, and each person usually takes on 2 or 3 actions that they say they're going to do or try and do before they meet again.
So can you tell when you put your washing machine on if you're producing enough electricity to sustain that washing machine?
Best time to have done any washing today would have been at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right, sure. Yes, because there was a bit of sunshine then.
So the workbook's organised into 7 sections, and each section includes a lot of practical actions, and we designed it from the very beginning that these actions are straightforward to do, they have a definite impact, so they reduce carbon and they save money.
The Transition Together workbook was designed really to be very, very accessible, colourful, bold, inviting, chatty, conversational, something that a group can sit down without needing someone to go through it with them every single session. It was very much designed so that each step felt achievable, but then when all added up together, it really made quite a meaningful impact on people's consumption.
There was an awful lot of learning that took place, and lots of things we were able to put into practice about how to save energy and how to be better users of the resources that are on this planet, really, without suffering, actually without suffering. And that's the key. It was actually a fun thing to do.
Because it looks at it on a street-by-street level, it means people can start to imagine the implications of that and start to think about what a post-oil, low-carbon world's going to look like on a small scale. It's not about how are we going to imagine the world totally changed, it's how can we imagine this bit of the world, how can we imagine that transformed and made over? And that feels much more digestible.
They're supported by grants in some cases. So for example, cavity wall insulation or loft insulation for some people, you can get grants through a local scheme. It's really aimed at people who haven't done an awful lot yet. If people were real experts and they'd totally done over their house and made it totally, carbon efficient, they probably wouldn't find many new things here. But the reality is that most people haven't done an awful lot of this stuff. So it gives a lot of people a lot of potential actions to do. It's important to say that we wouldn't give a grant for somebody to put solar panels on their roof unless they've done the basic energy efficiency stuff first.
By applying the things that we read about in the units, talked about, made a big difference. It's been more a sense of how we are in our lives rather than what we're doing, being more aware, being more conscious of what we're doing with our lives in regard to energy and wasting it or not wasting it and doing our best.
I think the long-term benefits of the group aspect in particular is really around the social cohesion. I've had people say to me that just after the first meeting they got their bike out of the garage and started cycling into town because in their car they had to drive past all their neighbours and already they were starting to feel, people are keeping an eye on what I'm doing here. So that was quite interesting as well, that kind of peer pressure that comes out.
You see that creativity spark and people start looking at each other's gardens in different ways and looking at each other's rooftops as having great potential. And I think probably in the long run, that's the change that will stick.
It's what society needs, what we all need, is to live in a safe world. And I think this is a start for it.
So our questions in the lift is around helping us scale up and replicate our work. And our specific question is really, how can government best enable meaningful and effective community action at a scale commensurate with the size of the challenge that we're facing? Created with the scaling back of local government power, which actually leaves a vacuum. And that vacuum is open to being filled by business, which may well operate on a short-term profit-seeking basis rather than focusing on sustainability and resilience. See, for example, the current framing of the Green Deal, which is not focused at all on enabling communities to actually deliver it. So we would like to see every government department embedding support for meaningful and scalable community action in their ongoing work and legislative programmes, just as at present they take account of, for example, disability and diversity. And our second point is that government could also establish financial support in the way of revolving loan funds that spread risk across communities, make money available at lower than market rates, and provide the best leverage for public money rather than just a one-off spend. So we've already proven with the work that we've been doing in Totnes, which was part funded by DEC money, that we can take government money and we can turn it into something much more powerful and valuable than the initial value of that grant. And we'd like to see a lot more of that happening. That's our points. Thank you.
We work on a wide range of projects across all sectors, really towards the aims of furthering energy sustainability and tackling fuel poverty. And we saw this gap in secondary schools that we wanted to do something about. YEP is Young Energy People. It was established by SWAYA.
YEP programme is a programme for most schools who can look at their energy and improve.
You realise and learn things that you had absolutely no idea about.
It's really important. It saves money, helps the environment.
You've got two benefits to the project. You've got the energy saving benefits in terms of cost and environmental impact, and you've got the wider educational benefits, which are the benefits that I really tend to see coming through in schools. We get them interested really through the recruitment assembly. That's a crucial part of the process.
Good afternoon, you are.
And they're then given an opportunity to apply to become part of the school energy management team. Once we have the team established, we then go in and train the students in sustainability issues and then also how to actually carry out an energy survey of their school. So they'll then develop a full energy report for their school and provide recommendations to the head teacher and the governors of their school.
We look at things and say, how can this be improved, and then think about ideas in which it can be improved.
The important point about the YEP project is it is still student guided. They decide what they want to do, and it makes a difference.
Energy detectors, Tewkesbury School first invented them, and we decided that they should be going around the blocks and making sure that the lights and computers and projectors that use a lot of energy aren't left on.
The lights are on.
This is one of our energy display boards. Some year 8s make little energy pledges on a leaf. And then over here is our board which we display which blocks are performing the best and which are performing the worst. So here you can see the new science block roof. That's been completely replaced and more insulation has been added. This is the Energy Monitor loan scheme we have for the students. They can take this out for 1 week for free. The whole point of the scheme is basically to show the students how much energy is using, how much it costs, and how much CO2 it puts into the atmosphere, and hopefully they can reduce that.
This is the desktop background which I've designed. It's on all of the school computers so that the kids are reminded to how to save energy and that the schools are part of the YEP project.
So the school have this energy monitoring thing which we can pull up online, and then we can see every single block's energy usage, gas usage, the current temperature, what the boilers are doing, and then we can change that.
We've got the evidence now that it does actually help save money and energy throughout the school.
We've had visits from schools where they work together as a team and discuss the sort of things that was going on in both schools. We've got some ideas from them, and hopefully they'll have got some ideas from us.
Because we've been able to save money in other areas, we've actually been able to reinvest in different parts of the curriculum.
We've saved £2,876.76. We could buy 15 Mongoose BMX bikes.
A lot of expensive River Island bags.
It does return on investment in just over a year, so even if schools had to pay for it themselves, they would get that money back through their savings.
We've raised awareness of sustainability issues, and that's the biggest gain. And that's not just amongst the young people, that's amongst staff as well.
They've learned to take on responsibility, they've improved their presentation skills, they've developed leadership skills.
They actually see that they do have the ability to make a difference in their school.
You feel good at the end of it, you feel happy that you've done it, and you feel like you've achieved something.
For future generations, we won't have any resources left if we don't save energy, so I thought I'd try and help out.
Without the youngsters actually buying into it, it wouldn't have been the success it has been.
The students continue to work on the project after we're gone.
They just do it because that's something they believe in. They think it's a worthwhile thing to do.
Good morning. The Department for Education report, Evidence of Impact of Sustainable Schools, states that multiple sources of evidence show that being a sustainable school both raises standards and enhances well-being. In fact, I would go further than this, as I believe that education for sustainability in its widest sense can help to turn an uncertain future into one that is environmentally, economically, and politically sustainable. If we are to prepare students for this future, we must encourage them to ask difficult questions and involve them in real-life decision-making, empowering them to think for themselves and make their own evidence-based decisions. This is where projects such as Young Energy People can play an important role in promoting a wider education beyond the realms of traditional academic subjects, an education that is student-driven and empowers students, involving them in decision-making in their local community. In order to replicate our success, it is therefore crucial that education for sustainability is promoted and valued in schools. And I would ask government to ensure that education for sustainability becomes core to the day-to-day running of all schools and is recognised in the National Curriculum Review, encouraging schools to embed aspects of sustainability across the curriculum. There are inherent risks in focusing exclusively on the use of technical measures whilst failing to recognise the importance of educating building users and promoting positive behaviour change. Technical measures last the lifetime of the building, whereas education has the potential to live on into future generations. Both have a role to play, and one of the key successes of our project is that it has successfully brought together technical solutions and behavioural change, applying this not only in the school itself, but extending its reach to homes and workplaces within the local community. It is important that government policy promotes a holistic approach, encouraging collaborative partnership at all levels, whilst ensuring that policies such as carbon reduction commitment are implemented in a way that avoids any split incentive between building users, building managers, and those who pay the energy and carbon bills. In summary, my message is largely one of partnership, using education to break down barriers. In doing so, Young Energy People has achieved significant energy savings whilst educating future generations, leaving a legacy of students who have the knowledge, skills, and drive that can create a truly sustainable future. Thank you.
The Centre set up in 1975 with the aim of informing and inspiring and enabling practical solutions for sustainable living. And since then we've gone on to be a living laboratory for environmental technologies. We run short courses in everything from organic gardening and sustainable woodland management to photovoltaic installation.
It attracts people from all sorts of areas, other disciplines, so it's not just engineers. And because you're mixing with people from other courses, you're able to develop your own ideas.
For me, the most interesting part of the WISE building is the lecture theatre. which is made out of rammed earth, and it's just great. And they've designed it in such a way that you're still in contact with the outside and you're still in contact with nature even though you're inside having a lecture.
We have a range of master's courses and an architecture part 2 of their training, professional diploma, and a research and doctoral programme. And the courses are generally arranged as residential modules. So like we're seeing the students around us, they come here for one intensive week a month, and they have an intensive series of lectures and practical sessions and one-to-one tutorials and seminars and so on.
If you're going to do a master's course, you tend to sort of go in and out of the university day in and day out. But here you actually come in for a week at a time, and it could be either once a month or every couple of months. And you stay in the campus and you actually work and do your work and actually get to meet people and talk and discuss. And so it's a much better feel. It's more of a boot camp type of situation.
We run courses here in photovoltaic installation, solar water heating, wind, biomass and hydro. So we cover most of the forms of renewable energy.
I wanted a course that was going to be a lot more practical and hands-on.
We use these practicals across a lot of our different teaching areas. So there are very few of these in the country, and they're really, really important because they mean that people, when they come on the course and they're learning how to install photovoltaics or solar water heating, they're actually doing it in a real environment. They're learning what it's like to be on a roof. They're learning what it's like to actually get up there, work at heights, install the technology safely.
Well, this week we're getting really muddy and dirty. We're looking at constructing using this renewable materials.
That's what this course is about, actually. A lot of it is about having fun while you're learning.
We're working with materials, so we're working with straw, timber, hemp, lime, earth.
I knew what I didn't want from a part 2, and I didn't want to be stuck in a lecture theatre.
Lots of people go on, they have a career change. You know, they might be in a job that they haven't particularly enjoyed, or they fancy doing something different. They're concerned about the environment, and they want to just get new skills. They come here, they do something that changes their lives. It changes the direction that they're going in.
This course, at the end of it, there are real jobs, so this course prepares you for the workplace.
Now, if we're going to get to a zero carbon future, we've got a big skills gap. We need the engineers, the designers, the architects and the planners of the future, and that's what CAT's really about, is training people up in those skills that we need for a zero carbon future.
Thank you. Well, I think Jonathan summed it up most aptly when he's talking about we need to think about doing energy efficiency and doing renewable energy in a big way, in a new way, in a size and scale that we haven't really considered up until now. I mean, retrofitting 20 million homes in 20 years is the biggest undertaking that we've taken in the UK, probably since the end of the Second World War, post-World War II reconstruction. And it will require a New Deal army of specifiers, fitters, manufacturers and installers to actually make it happen. But I think we have to be absolutely honest. The UK doesn't have this at present. And in fact, if you look at the data, the trend is actually away from STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, into things like media. So we'll perhaps have people who could do the retrofit in cyberspace in Second Life, but wouldn't actually be able to do it in real life. So what we need, really, to make the Green Deal happen is a green skills deal. That will, I mean, David and Nick, we need direct support for the training organisations. We need to develop a lot of new courses very quickly. We need to upskill the size of the people that we get through it. And we need to offer them very attractive rates, because for people to invest in their own training, it has to be a good deal. In fact, I think we should be offering scholarships for the skills that we really need. And perhaps an assured period of employment at the end of it. So you know you will have the work, working for the carbon reduction army, knowing that you can repay from the job that you'll be doing. So I think also what we need to do is to look at the task in hand and actually draw up a skills audit of the skills we need if we're to maintain and meet our international obligations, if we're to actually do what we say we'll do. We're going to need CAT centres in every county. So I think we need a policy that can really gear this up and roll it out across the UK. Thank you very much.
Paul, hang on. Yeah, thanks. Great, thank you very much indeed. That gets us off to an excellent start. Now, because the proceedings today are being streamed in one way or another, when you ask a question, could you please stand up? It'll help to project your voice anyway, but if you can stand up, then you'll be more easily recognizable on the camera. Great, good, well, thank you, and some very practical ideas there about the things that need to happen, and that Chris Huhn might get cracking with. I think the key thing there is this scale story from all three of our speakers. And it is true that sometimes I've noticed in DEC that civil servants blink at the prospect of the 20 million, because it's a big, big story. Okay, who'd like to get us going out there with some questions? Please focus on what we've heard. We're not doing the sort of great, big global scene now. We're just thinking about these finalists' experiences and what that means as we take things forward now in the UK. Please.
Hello, I'm Phyllis Santamaria from Learning Without Borders, and we're based on a farm near Epping Forest. So I'd just like to say we're up for there. Right. So just like to talk to you about that, because I just see there's just a huge gap with the skills and also the jobs at the end, and linking the vocational programs with the jobs and enterprise development.
Thank you. Sounds like a good lunchtime conversation. Thank you very much. Please. The second microphone coming.
Hello, my name's David Cotton. I noticed that there are 1,100 people in Totnes, I think, involved with the energy saving. I wondered, to put it into scale, what proportion of Totnes population is that?
There's about 23,000 people in Totnes and District, so it's a sizable proportion of them.
20,000?
There's 23,000 people in Totnes and District, which is the whole area that we're covering with the project.
So sort of 5% of them are involved?
That's right, yes.
Right.
Yeah. So
thank you.
It's a good start. There's more to do yet.
And it is Totnes.
That's right.
Yeah. So you need to be what do you have a target? The numbers of people you want to get involved within a given period of time. Do you target your own program?
We do target it, and particularly because we wanted to see a representative selection of the whole community involved in the project for the best learnings. And that was both the types of people, so the age groups and the percentage of low-income homes involved. And we ended up with 34% participants being low-income, which represented the town. But also the property types as well. So we had bungalows, we had, rows of Victorian terraces and so on. So we could really maximise what we've learnt from it.
What is your target? Total numbers of people in Totnes?
We'd like 20%.
20%, okay. That's a good benchmark. Thank you. There's a microphone there, please. Could you mind using it, please, because it's...
Sorry, James Fitzgerald. Could you tell me what involvement your local authority, what practical assistance they've given you? Are they letting you run off and do it all on your own, watching from a safe distance, or are they actually getting involved?
To me? To me, that question?
Fiona, I think if you start with that one.
Thank you. South Hams is our local district authority, and they've been very supportive. They've actually put cash up front to support the low-income homes. So particularly where we're giving grants for solar PV, we wanted to make sure that was really accessible to the low-income homes. So South Hams up-fronted the cash that a local reinvestment trust then offered as loans to low-income homes at only 3%. And given that was then covered by the feed-in tariff, it meant there weren't any cost barriers. So they've been very helpful in actually enabling us to reach, the most vulnerable parts of the community, and they've been very supportive.
Mark, your examples were schools in Gloucestershire.
Gloucestershire, yes.
So how's that panned out?
Gloucestershire County Council have proved to be very supportive. In fact, the two most recent phases of the project have been completely funded by Gloucestershire County Council. The project originally started as joint-funded European project with half the funding from Intelligent Energy Europe and 50% provided by the County Council. And they were so impressed with the results that they've then agreed to fund 2 further phases. So County Council involvement has been crucial in the project.
Paul, I imagine your local council has lived with CAT for so long, you must either have a really brilliant relationship or no relationship at all.
We have a good relationship, and actually our site's split over the boundary of 2, so we're in Gwynedd and we're in Powys, and we've had good support from both, and particularly we've had support with the WISE project from the Welsh Assembly Government, that do seem to be pushing the barriers of what needs to be achieved.
So, Fiona, you raised your concerns about the localism bill in some respects, downgrading the importance of local authorities. The three of you seem to be telling us that there's a pretty good set of relationships at the moment. Are you worried about what's going to happen in the future? Is that your concern?
Well, certainly we're worried about the South Hams Council being able to carry on funding this part of the programme because they're running out of budget for it. So there's definite concerns on that. But I would say at the same time, they're very keen now to work with us a lot more closely. And I think what we found working with local councils is you need to have a real project to work together on. And then once you've done that and you've built the trust and the relationship, it can go into new areas. But clearly they're very constrained with that.
Absolutely, yeah. Gentleman at the back there.
Colin Hines from the Green New Deal Group. I think your future is very, very bright, actually, because the economy is going to tank in this country, and the Green Deal is about the only thing that the government's got to do something about it. But the most difficult thing about the Green Deal will be getting over the I can't be asked syndrome of people. You know, why the hell should I let these people into my house? So I was wondering, from the schools aspect, whether you start to use a sort of kind of carbon pester power from pupils into the houses, and how you might get from Totnes to the suburb to the inner city in Birmingham, and what your experience has been on when your trainees have gone out and started work. Has it been that easy to get in through front doors?
Thank you, Colin. I'm sure we'll come back to that in our panel discussion on the Green Deal when we change over halfway through. But just quick reflections on that sort of behaviour change, personal involvement story.
Can I start
Please.
On the pester power?
Yeah.
Yeah, pester power of students has proved to be incredibly important through the project. And this is in all of our work with schools, with primary schools and secondary schools, to the extent that we've even had parents reported back to us from the staff in the school at parents' evenings. They're saying, you know, little Johnny came home and he hasn't stopped nagging us about turning that TV off when we go to bed ever since. So just through educating the students and then going back into their local communities, they can then have a huge impact on their parents, and their parents can educate other people. So schools, I think, have a crucial role to play in extending the learning out into the further community.
Yeah, and I think from what we've learned is the barriers to people actually doing things isn't necessarily at the moment that they can't get the financing to do it, because a lot of the actions that we cover in Transition Together don't actually cost any money. A lot of the basic behaviour change things don't need technology. So just being able to offer financing isn't going to create a big take-up. And that's why we like something like Transition Together, which creates this kind of like a social norm around it about doing these things, and when people work together and help each other to do it, because it feels without that part of it, it's just not going to be successful.
I think Colin's absolutely right. We've faced a very exciting opportunity here, and I think the feedback from our students is that they are getting into some very exciting jobs and some very exciting places. And wherever I travel, somebody will say to me, Kat, yes, we've got one of your students working for us at the moment. Very interesting. So there's this huge sort of outflow of people who we actually are trying to keep in touch with each other through a Cat Student Alumni Network as well. So they're all still in touch with each other. And I think there's enormous potential.
Cat diaspora. Please.
Thank you. Tony Bosworth from Friends of the Earth. It's a follow-up to the question over there about the role of local authorities. How would it help, or would it help, transition towns and the schools initiatives if all local authorities had as a statutory duty that tackling climate change and a requirement to draw up a local climate change strategy? Would that help the scaling up and the spreading of your sort of work?
Thank you. Interesting sort of policy suggestion there, because of course all the national indicators around carbon have disappeared now. So one of the big drivers that central government had to encourage local government went as they got rid of all those national indicators and the audit commission. So would a statutory duty kind of keep them all applied to this stuff?
I think it would help. But I think the thing that's really going to make a big difference is if they really get behind it from a values perspective themselves. And that's what I hope we're starting to see more. We actually had the CEO of Southampton District Council come along to a session we did the other week about creating a whole vision for our new local economy. And the things that he was saying was absolutely along the lines of what we want to be hearing. So that shift in the actual thinking and the hearts and minds of people is, to me, a lot more important. But having the legislation there will inevitably help make sure that definitely happens.
I would like to see all schools have a sustainable schools officer who'd be responsible for promoting sustainability aspects in schools. A lot of them currently do. I know, for instance, Worcestershire County Council are very proactive on those type of things, but at the moment it's really pockets of good practice in the country rather than that being spread across the country. Unfortunately, it looks more like it's going to go the other way with the cutbacks at the moment, in that a lot of the sustainability officers are actually being cut rather than the new ones being put in post. But ideally, long term, I would like to see support for schools in all counties.
What is the status of the Department for Education Sustainable Schools work now? Does it have any status? Is it completely disappeared?
No, the Sustainable Schools framework has been completely removed. That's the bad news. The good news is there are a group of organisations called the Sustainable Schools Alliance, led largely by Seed here in London, who are actually taking on the role of trying to promote that in schools. But government support severely lacking at the moment.
Paul, anything to add?
I think there's a big role for local authorities to have a plan and to have that set against national targets where they know what are the assets that they have in terms of renewable energy, and they're devising a skills plan to access those assets and bring them to market. They know where the big energy problems are, and they're devising a plan to get the skills to have the people to deal with their energy challenges.
Okay, time for one more very quick one. Anybody want to leap forward? Please. Hang on, just wait for the microphone, please. Very quick.
Mr. Hampton, Dulwich Going Greener. You talked about the local authority role. Any involvement of the private sector in any of these three groups, given that allegedly money is to be saved and made, are any private sector organisations either involved or have the potential to be involved?
Directly, there are lots and lots of businesses that are springing up that are moving into this sector very, very quickly. There's huge amounts of opportunities for business across the UK to deal with these two big tasks, because I think there's a recognition that we can't go on just being a retail economy, importing Chinese products and selling them on the high street forever. We have to actually build our skills, as Germany has, and learn the lessons from Germany around this big energy transition.
Okay, we're going to come back to that in our second session when we look at the Green Deal in more detail. So, thank you very much.